Greetings and welcome back to our study, our special study on Advent this year at St. Paul's United Church of Christ in German Township. I'm Pastor Terry Farmer, and if you are just joining us for these studies, this is the second in a series of four. Last time we got together, we talked about the role of prophecy in connection with the Christmas story, and that session, if you missed it, is still available on our YouTube channel or also on our website. And today we are going to move into the second in the series, and we're going to talk about angelic appearances in the Bible. Now, if this is the first time you've joined us, I'll repeat what I said last time. All four of our sessions for our Advent study are available currently on our YouTube channel and our website. If you want to see them now, you can go there and get all four of them. But we will be sending out a different one in the worship link each week, and you can use it that way if you choose, and we certainly encourage you to share them with your friends if you think they would be interested. So today we're going to talk about the role of angels in the Christmas story, but we're going to start with the same format that we used last time. We're going to talk about who or what angels are and how they are used throughout the Old Testament before we bring it up to the Christmas story that we know so well. Now, there are a number of heavenly creatures that are referred to in the Bible, and even more in what are called the deuterocanonical books, such as the book of Enoch, which does not appear in the Protestant version of the Bible, but does appear as a deuterocanonical book or apocryphal book in many Catholic and Orthodox Bibles that have more books than we have in the Protestant Church. But this whole scope of heavenly creatures tells us a couple of things about what's going on in heaven according to Scripture. First of all, there are a variety of heavenly creatures, of which angels are only one. We hear references to cherubim and seraphim being two different types of heavenly creatures whose appearance apparently is so shocking that they are rarely used to communicate with humans. We have physical descriptions of them having multiple wings and multiple arms, and in some tellings of their appearance, very terrifying faces, to be quite honest with you. So we have those, and we also have angels. And as I said, in the deuterocanonical books, we have others. There's really a very elaborate hierarchy of creatures in heaven described in these various writings. And if we want to understand this connection between heaven and earth, we can go back to the very early vision of Jacob when he saw the ladder descending from heaven and heavenly creatures going up and down on the ladder, letting us know that there is a connection between heaven and earth in that early Jewish story that we claim as part of our scriptural heritage. Angels seem to have a specific role, and actually a couple. One is a role of a protector. We have stories about the angel Michael being a defender. We also have references to the heavenly host, which is a reference to an army of angels at the command of God. So when you hear of heavenly hosts, that's really a military reference in effect, that these angels can be called upon to do God's work on the earth. But angels are also serve the role as messenger between God and God's people. We have a period of history where God spoke directly, for example, to Moses and to some of the patriarchs. But later in history, in human history, those communications tended to come through an intermediary, an angel, an angelic figure. And that is where our current notion of angels tends to come from. There is a reference to angels protecting us individually, so that protector role can also be personalized according to Scripture. But one of the things that an angel is not is a departed human soul. The Bible is very clear on this, and we have a lot of inaccurate popular mythology that has developed that would make us think that our deceased loved ones have become angelic people, or creatures rather, I should say, angelic creatures. once they have passed on to heaven. And that just simply has no scriptural support whatsoever. It is a nice trope, if you will, for a movie like It's a Wonderful Life, which I love. I think it's a great movie. Nothing wrong with it, but understand that when the cobbler, I believe he was, gets his wings finally, that's not because he's not somebody who died and passed away. So we have these different creatures that appear in heaven. We see them showing up again in the book of Revelation, where we have more descriptive, imaginative images that are drawn up of what heaven looks like or will look like at the end times. But angels fit into that. So when we get down to the Christmas story, we have angelic appearances that are important, and they are important to 4 characters in the story. You may think, well, who are the other 2? Well, I'm going to explain that to you here in just a second. In both Luke and in Matthew, angels appear very early in the gospel in connection with the birth stories. And perhaps it would be advisable at this point to point out that Matthew has the wise men, Luke has the shepherds, Mark has nothing whatsoever to do with the birth of Jesus. It's quiet, it's silent about that. And John, of course, has its famous prologue where the birth is described in what I would call grand cosmic terms and not in the particulars of what happened on earth. But in Matthew and in Luke, they show up early. And in Luke, is where I want to start, they are important to 3 people in that gospel. And the Christmas story rarely on Christmas Eve starts with the story of Zechariah and Elizabeth, but it really is the beginning of the story. You can't cut that off the story and have a full picture any more than you can take the slaughter of the innocents away from Matthew's gospel and say that the Christmas story has been fully told, because it simply hasn't been until you get through those details. But you may recall that Zechariah was a priest doing his term of duty in the Holy of Holies at the temple in Jerusalem. His wife was well past childbearing age, and as we have come to hear in previous couple situations, they were barren and wanted children. An angel appears to Zechariah when he's in the Holy of Holies, tells him that he's going to bear a son. Zechariah basically doesn't buy it, doesn't believe him, and therefore is struck mute until his son is born. But that prophetic utterance is important to him and Elizabeth, obviously, because they will have a child. That's John the Baptist, a cousin of Jesus's, apparently, or at least a relative of Jesus's. And they do have that child. And Zechariah is able to speak after the baby is born, and he gives him the name that the angel gave him to name the child, which is John, which was unexpected because usually the son would be named after the father in that culture or some other relative, and John was the name the angel said to use. So the angel promising that, again, the Abram and Sarai miracle, they later became Abraham and Sarah, as you may recall, would be played out again in their lifetimes, with Zechariah and Elizabeth having a child when Elizabeth was well past being barren. And perhaps most importantly, God working in this way and giving this message puts everybody on alert that God is continuing to do something new here in the lifetime of these individuals. And of course, we have in Luke the appearance of the angel to Mary. And the angel has a name in Luke, by the way. It's the angel Gabriel, very specific in both the message to Zechariah for about Elizabeth's birth, and then also to Mary. And we call his appearance to Mary being the Annunciation, is what that incident or that time, event is usually referred to, and Mary's told that she's going to have a child, and she responds favorably to being led by God to be used however he would want to use her. And so we have the God telling Zechariah and Elizabeth, and also telling Mary, that the thing that's going to happen next in your lives, the things, I should say, that are going to happen next in your lives are the work of God, and alerting them that this is a new thing that God is doing in their lifetime. And that's important, I think, also to remember that between the end of our prophets, our minor prophets in the Bible, up until the Gospels, there's what's called the 400 years of silence, where we have no scriptural record of God speaking to his people. We don't know that it didn't happen, but we don't have a scriptural record of it. And so now this is sort of like the alarm clock going off amongst God's people. Wake up, something new is about to happen. Here are some miracles that are occurring. Pay attention. Now, the angel appears physically to Zechariah and to Mary in Luke's gospel. But angels apparently can have a physical body, but they can also be invisible. And we hear references to that, evidence for that in the Old Testament, but we see it, I think, a little more clearly here in the way Matthew interweaves angelic appearances in his story. And Matthew writes his story largely from the perspective of Joseph and how Joseph is going to react to the fact that his young, supposedly virginal wife, betrothed, I should say, is how he's going to react to the fact that she's bearing a child. And Matthew has the angel appearing to Joseph, telling him not to divorce her, in a dream. So the angel does not physically appear to Joseph, but appears in a dream and gives him God's message. And that's the way the angel also appears to Joseph when he tells Joseph to flee to Egypt, and when he tells Joseph it's time to come back, but keep going because there's still people out there that would want to harm the child. So we have a corporeal or a bodily appearance in Luke, and we have an invisible appearance in Matthew. But both are direct messages from God through the intermediary of using an angel. We have angels that appear in the story on Jesus being in the desert, in the wilderness, ministering to him after the end of 40 days. But then the angels take a break in the gospel telling, and they don't reappear until they play roles in the various tellings of the resurrection story. And so we do see a little bit of a notion here of angels abiding and intervening when God directs them to do it, or when it is important to do it for the benefit of God's people. But they don't always seem to butt in and somehow micromanage the way our lives are going to be experienced or played out. So that's what we have to talk about angels today, and hopefully that gives you a little more context for how these messengers are being used here. But before I conclude, I've almost missed out one of the other important ones. The angels also appear to the shepherds. And the fact that it's angels that appear to the shepherds, again, underscores the fact that this message about who they will find in Bethlehem, in the manger, is part of God's plan. Now, there are some specific references to what this child will be, and maybe they were absorbed by the shepherds, or maybe they weren't. But the fact that God worked through angels to bring that message to them, not only the individual angel, but then the appearance of the angelic host that we just mentioned a few moments ago, underscores to those shepherds that whatever's going on here, and at whatever level they can understand what is taking place here, this is God's work. And I think that circumstance of that communication, even in addition to the actual substance of the communication, is what leads them to stand up and go and seek and to find, and then once they have done that, to then wonder what it is that they have just experienced. I hope you'll be with me next time when we continue our study by talking about the political situation in Judea in these days, which is important to fully understanding the story of Christmas. Thank you.